Night over Cleveland, refinery fires crown the river. Oil barrels stack like fortresses, and one signature tightens an entire economy. In a walnut boardroom, men whisper standardization, like scripture, because whoever controls quality controls pricing power, and therefore wealth. Outside, workers cough beneath soot and steam. Inside, ledgers glow, assets rising, competitors fading, as if the market itself is being erased. Rail cars line up obediently. Like soldiers, a private rate agreement turns transportation into leverage, and leverage into a monopoly. Then the nation wakes to a single name stamped on every barrel: Standard Oil, quietly deciding what America pays to move. This is T-only oil. It's capital discipline. Control the supply chain, and you control inflation at the pump. Before it's called that. For rivals, the choice is simple: sell cheap today or bleed tomorrow. Bankruptcy becomes the tax for resisting consolidation. For banks, it is irresistible: predictable cash flow, secured assets, expanding market share. Debt becomes fuel for empire, not danger. And for consumers, the bargain is seductive: lower prices, cleaner kerosene, while one company quietly writes the rules for everyone. But every empire invites a reckoning. When a monopoly touches every household, politics turns personal, and regulators smell blood rewind. Before the crown, there, as a boy in a plain suit, counting pennies like soldiers, practicing control on himself. Cleveland in the 1850s, muddy streets, iron lungs of factories, sermons on Sundays. Discipline is the only luxury he can afford. He keeps a ledger before he keeps a fortune. Every expense is measured. Every temptation becomes a debt he refuses to carry. When others chase speculation, he chases certainty. Steady margins, repeatable processes, reliable partners. This is standardized thinking before oil. Then America discovers kerosene, light captured in liquid. Demand explodes. Households paying nightly tribute to whoever supplies the lamp. Oil is messy at first. Wildcat wells, inconsistent quality, fires that swallow fortunes. Chaos is opportunity for someone who hates chaos. He enters refining, not drilling. Upstream is gamble, refining is control, turning crude uncertainty into sellable certainty, barrel by barrel. In dim offices, he negotiates like a banker, not a dreamer. He wants predictable assets, not romantic discoveries. His advantage is boring and lethal efficiency. Waste becomes a sin. Productivity becomes a prayer. Costs fall like dominoes. Standardization means trust. Same flame, same brightness. Every time. In finance, reliability is a currency, and he mints it. Now comes the real game: transportation. Railroads are arteries, and rates are oxygen. Control the rate, and you control survival. He offers rail executives volume, endless barrels, and asks for secret rebates. Quiet discounts become a weapon no rival sees. With cheaper shipping, he can underprice competitors without losing money. Pricing power is int-T brutality. It's mathematics with sharp teeth. Small refiners face a nightmare: match his price and starve, or keep their price and watch customers vanish. Then Rockefeller arrives with a smile and an offer: sell your plant today, or lose everything tomorrow. He buys competitors the way storms buy rooftops, one by one, then suddenly all at once. Consolidation becomes inevitability. To the public, it looks like progress: bigger facilities, lower costs. To rivals, it feels like suffocation wearing a silk glove. He perfects vertical integration: barrels, pipelines, rail cars, sales offices. Every link becomes an asset he can leverage, and he captures byproducts others throw away: lubricants, wax, chemicals. In his empire, even waste becomes revenue. Money follows order. Banks prefer predictable empires to chaotic startups. So credit widens, debt transformed into expansion capital in distant financial centers, London counting houses, gilt certificates, couriers in rain. Investors reward stability, not romance. Rockefeller understands something timeless. Markets fear uncertainty. If you sell certainty at scale, you can charge for peace of mind. Soon his share swells. Rivals become footnotes. The nation's energy system begins to resemble a private kingdom with invoices. But the bigger the crown, the louder the questions. Who sets the price? Who decides the winners? Who owns the future? Critics call it tyranny. Supporters call it efficiency. Rockefeller calls it stewardship. An empire of discipline, guarded by contracts. Behind closed doors, lawyers invent a new machine, the trust. Many companies, one control legal camouflage for consolidated power. The trust turns ownership into a chessboard. Shares become pieces. Boards become puppets. Decisions flow from one quiet center. This is the moment monopoly stops being a rumor and becomes architecture designed, documented, defended, and monetized. And as kerosene money floods in, a new fear rises. If one man can standardize oil, what else can he standardize? Because the true product is in T-fuel. It's S-control. Over assets, over debt, over prices, until the nation must decide, endure, or fight. By the 1880s, Standard Oil's shadow stretches coast to coast, pipelines like veins, refineries like cathedrals of capital. In rail yards, his tank cars roll first. Preferred rates mean preferred survival, an invisible subsidy paid by every competitor. Rockefeller does shout. He standardizes. He measures every barrel, every cent, until efficiency becomes a form of domination. Prices fall, and America applauds. Yet the applause sounds different when you realize choice has quietly disappeared, because monopoly is in only higher prices. It's gatekeeping, deciding which businesses receive oxygen and which suffocate in paperwork. Rivals whisper about rebates and threats, but proof evaporates. The trust's power is designed to look like coincidence. In mansions lit by kerosene, wealth becomes tradition. Marble staircases, silver trays, dividends arriving like clockwork. Yet on the factory edge, families live in soot and debt, paying for light while profits climb to distant boardrooms. Rockefeller preaches thrift and virtue, but his empire runs on leverage. Legal leverage, logistical leverage, financial leverage. And here's the paradox. The same discipline that lowers costs also concentrates power until markets resemble monarchies. Then comes the pen that threatens the crown. A journalist's pen, dipped in evidence, aimed at the trust's reputation. Her name is Ida Tarbell. She grew up in oil country where standard deals weren't theory. They were family scars. She opens dusty records, interviews the broken, and follows money trails like footprints through ash. Each article reads like an indictment: secret rebates, intimidation, acquisitions masked as mergers, competition strangled politely. America devours the story at breakfast tables, realizing monopoly has a face, and that face doesn't blink. Public trust is an asset too. When it fractures, politicians smell a campaign, and prosecutors smell a precedent. Washington begins speaking a new language: antitrust, restraint of trade, public interest, words sharp enough to cut wealth. Standard's lawyers respond with architecture, subsidiaries, holding companies, paper walls designed to absorb a tax. They argue efficiency benefits everyone. Cheaper energy, stable supply, fewer fires. The defense sounds almost reasonable, but the prosecution asks a simpler question. If you can compete without permission, is it still a market? Meanwhile, Rockefeller's fortune compounds. Dividends turn into new assets, new influence, new walls around the empire. He donates lavishly, building universities and churches, converting oil money into moral legitimacy, philanthropy as insulation. Critics call it laundering reputation. Supporters call it stewardship. Either way, power learns to look benevolent. When your empire is paper and rail, one subpoena can feel like a match. Federal investigators dig deeper, connecting the dots, the same names, the same directors, the same decisions. One center, many masks. Courts don't fear wealth. They fear unchecked wealth. Because unchecked wealth can rewrite law through sheer economic gravity. Standard's competitors, once silent, now testify. The room fills with stories of price, squeezes, and forced sales. This is how empires fall in modern times, not with cannons, but with documents, headlines, and precedent. And the lesson gets darker. Monopoly isn't built in one strike. It's assembled patiently until resistance becomes expensive. Regulators finally act, and the market holds its breath. If standard breaks, fortunes break, and an energy system trembles in boardrooms. Executives calculate risk like bankers. Assets versus liabilities, reputation versus revenue, control versus compliance. Because antitrust is just punishment. It is a forced redesign, turning one engine into many and hoping the lights stay on. Outside, investors wonder if the breakup will create value. Sometimes dismantling a monopoly unlocks hidden wealth. Inside, Rockefeller stays composed. A true strategist plans for every outcome, including losing control and profiting anyway. The case moves forward like a freight train. Every hearing tightens the net around Standard's legal camouflage. Yet the public forgets something. Even if Standard shatters, the people it trained still control the industry's bloodstream. Monopoly can be broken on paper, but culture survives. Pricing discipline, coordination, quiet power learned through years of dominance. And now, the empire faces its most dangerous enemy, not a rival, but a rule. Law catching up to capital. The audience wants a villain, but history offers a mirror. Rockefeller reveals what markets reward when regulation arrives late. So, as judges deliberate, remember the real question. Do we fear monopoly because it's illegal or because it works? 1911 arrives like a verdict carved in stone. The Supreme Court studies Standard Oil's machinery, then calls it unreasonable restraint. Inside the chamber, legal language turns into financial violence. A single decision threatens to fracture decades of consolidated control. The order is blunt. Dissolve the trust, split the empire into pieces, and let the market breathe again. Headlines hit the streets like cannon fire. Traders lean in, asking the only question that matters. What happens to the assets? Because a breakup can destroy power and create wealth. Shares in smaller companies can rise like liberated springs. Rockefeller understands this math. Control can shrink while net worth grows. Ownership spread across many new giants. Standard becomes 34 companies, each with pipelines, refineries, and hungry executives, trained in the same discipline. The public celebrates a moral victory, yet the industry remains concentrated, just wearing new names and new stationery. This is capitalism's magic trick. Break the crown, keep the castle. The structure changes, but incentives stay intact, and the oil economy accelerates. Automobiles multiply, engines drink gasoline, and demand turns from lamplight to speed. The same supply chain logic simply finds a new throne. The lesson for modern investors is brutal. Regulation lags innovation, and empires expand in the gap. Rockefeller retires from battle and perfects a different weapon: philanthropic capital, deployed like strategy, not charity. He funds medicine, education, research, transforming oil profits into institutions that outlive any court decision. Critics still hiss, blood money, but history is rarely pure. Wealth often arrives with smoke still clinging to it. Meanwhile, America learns a permanent rule. Monopolies don't announce themselves. They arrive as convenience, then become dependency, and dependency becomes leverage. When the economy can function without your product, you own negotiation itself. Standard, S breakup, also seeds today. S oil titans, names that echo through portfolios, pensions, and modern geopolitical risk. The 20th century proves it. Oil is end, T a commodity. It S strategic infrastructure, assets that governments will fight over. Rockefeller's true invention was T-oil. It was the operating system of monopoly, standardize, integrate, then leverage scale. Look closely and you'll recognize it today. In tech platforms, shipping giants, insurance empires, anywhere scale crushes choice. The pattern begins with a bargain cheaper, faster, cleaner. Then it ends with a toll booth on the entire economy. Antitrust is meant to stop the toll booth. Yet enforcement swings like a pendulum. Hard in crises, soft in booms. Rockefeller's era teaches a high RPM truth. Market share is power, but narrative is protection until evidence arrives. Ida Tarbell didn't beat standard with money. She beat it with credibility, an intangible asset that moves courts and crowds. In the end, the Supreme Court breaks the structure, not the ambition. America still rewards the hunger that built it. And Rockefeller dies unimaginably wealthy, proof that legal defeat can be financially survivable when your assets are everywhere. So what do we do with this story? Condemn it, admire it, or study it like a manual for modern power? Because if you want to spot the next monopoly, don't look for villains. Look for industries being quietly standardized. The oil crown was never just a crown. It was a blueprint, one that still tempts every founder, banker, and regulator today. And the financial lesson is simple. Whenever one firm owns the pipes, the rails, and the rules, competition becomes theater. In markets, the most dangerous word is price. It's permission, because permission is the hidden tax on innovation. Rockefeller mastered permission through logistics and contracts. Today, it's mastered through platforms, data, and distribution. So, when you hear efficiency, listen carefully. Sometimes it's progress. Sometimes it's the first brick in a fortress. The Standard Oil story ends in court, but its logic continues, quietly shaping every industry that touches your wallet. Because capitalism does fear morality. It fears constraints. And without constraints, the strongest incentive is to consolidate. The next monopoly won't arrive with barrels. It will arrive with subscriptions, APIs, fees, and free convenience, which means the most valuable skill isn't predicting prices. It's identifying choke points, where leverage becomes unavoidable. Rockefeller bought the choke points. The world paid the toll. That's the oil crown, and why it still matters. Next, we follow the blueprint into the present, where modern empires look cleaner, but the leverage is just as old. Modern monopolies don't smell like crude oil. They smell like clean interfaces, frictionless checkout, and contracts hidden behind agree. Yet the mechanism is identical. Own distribution, standardized behavior, then charge rent on the economy's daily habits. Rockefeller's pipelines were physical choke points. Today, choke points are digital, platform fees, payment rails, data moats, switching costs. Every era has its kerosene moment, when a new product becomes necessity. That when pricing power quietly becomes policy, and policy comes late, because regulators measure yesterday while markets build tomorrow. The gap is where empires compound. So what the investor's lesson? Follow the standard. Whoever defines the standard tends to own the margins. Follow the supply chain too. In any industry, the most profitable place is often the bottleneck everyone must pass. Rockefeller didn't need to control every well. He controlled refining, transport, storage. turning partial control into total leverage. Then he used scale as a shield, lower prices to crush rivals, raise discipline to dominate, repeat until no one can breathe. That strategy still works because consumers love bargains. The bill arrives later, disguised as fees, limits, and dependency. Antitrust tries to stop the bill, but antitrust is slow, political, and often captured by the very capital it regulates. Standard Oil was broken, yet energy stayed concentrated. That is the uncomfortable truth. Structure changes, incentives remain. The premium lesson isn't T monopolies are evil. It's monopolies are profitable, and profit attracts repetition. Rockefeller's empire also proves a second truth. Reputation is an asset, and philanthropy can be a long-term hedge. But even philanthropy can't erase the core equation: control distribution plus scale equals pricing power. Then political backlash. So if you're rebuilding a business, the warning is clear: don't build a fortress so strong it invites siege. And if you reinvesting, the question is sharper: is this company creating value or building a toll booth on value? Watch for permission. When customers and competitors need approval to exist, that monopoly logic wearing modern clothes. Watch for switching costs too. Rockefeller used rails. Modern giants use ecosystems that make leaving feel like bankruptcy. Finally, remember the twist of 1911. Breaking an empire can enrich its owner. Power falls. Equity multiplies. That SY regulation must be designed carefully, because punishment that creates profit is a lesson the next empire studies. Rockefeller standardized oil, but he also standardized a playbook: integrate, underprice, acquire, legalize, and defend. Once you see that playbook, you'll spot it everywhere: finance, tech, healthcare, logistics. Anywhere assets can be locked. The world calls it efficiency. Markets call it scale. But history calls it what it is: concentration of power. And power always demands a price, paid in competition, innovation, and sometimes democracy, when capital buys the narrative. In Rockefeller's time, the battlefield was kerosene and rail. Today, it's attention, data, and financial rails you never see. But the emotion is unchanged: fear of missing out, fear of bankruptcy, and the quiet comfort of a trusted monopoly. So when you watch the lights turn on, remember the crown behind the flame, because someone always profits from necessity. The oil crown wasn't just one man's story. It's the DNA of modern capitalism: beautiful, productive, and dangerously seductive. And if you want the final financial lesson, don't worship empires. Study incentives, because incentives build the next crown.